on. Well, hello everybody. This afternoon I'm super excited, and hopefully you're as well. Hopefully you have had your coffee afternoon, because we have right now close to 1 billion of exits on stage. Okay, 1 billion, 5 companies. At some point in time, it's going to be 5 companies, 5 billion. Not yet, not yet. Okay, but I'm super excited to have. I'm going to introduce all of them right now. Just a quick reminder: this panel is held thanks to Barcelona Tech City. Barcelona Tech City is the association of Barcelona startups, 400 startups, 1 billion of funding in the last 24 months, and also thanks to Encomenda Venture Capital, a seed fund that I'm co-funding with Carlos Blanco. Okay, so now let's go back to the panel. We have a fantastic lineup of people. Okay, we have Lucas Carné, co-founder of Privalia, a fantastic e-commerce company that was sold in 2016 for over 450 million. We have Javier Rubio here, chairman and investor of SocialPoint, fantastic social games company, sold just a few weeks ago for over 275 million. We have also Gonzalo Ortiz, co-founder of Mitula, okay, a classifieds website, great website, international, that IPO'd in Australia for over 130 million in 2015. Then we have also Íñigo Juantegui, co-founder of La Nevera Roja, a marketplace for food delivery that was sold for over 80 million in 2015. And we have also Iñaki Cenarro in the back end, co-founder of Trovit, sold for over 80 million also in 2014. Okay, so the objective of this afternoon is to actually the audience, okay, to tell them about how to scale and how to exit companies in Southern Europe. Before we start, just a quick show of hands. How many entrepreneurs do we have in the audience? Entrepreneurs? Excellent. How many corporate executives do we have? Great. And even more important, how many wannabe entrepreneurs do we have in the audience? Okay, that's very good. So, hey guys, you can learn. Okay, so listen, first is, I just want to do a very quick round to get a few metrics from those fantastic companies that we have here. Okay, so I'm going to ask them, guys, could you just tell us how many years did it take you from start to exit? Okay, how many employees you had when you exited, in how many countries you were, okay, and how much funding you had raised. Those are some key metrics that we would like to know to actually give you some context of who we have here on the table. So just these years, employees, countries, and funding.
Okay, let's start with SocialPoint. SocialPoint was a 7-year journey, 2 years pre-funding and then 5 years with investors, moving the company from basically ground zero to almost 300 plus employees, one single office. It's a very global business, and 40 million of investment from investors, but I have to clarify, was 15 in and 25 cash out, pre-selling the company to align the interests of founders and investors.
Privalia was a 10-year history. We raised around 200 million, slightly above 200. Almost 150 went for secondary, and more than 50 for investing in the company. We were 1,000 employees, and we were operating in 4 markets, Brazil and Mexico in LATAM, and Spain and Italy in Southern Europe.
Okay, just one clarification. Lucas speaks in past tense. Privalia still exists, and you're doing great, okay? No, just to clarify. Okay.
Yes, from Mitula, we were in 36 countries. we had a really small investment found just for a strategic investor for 300,000, and we had about 55 employees. What's the other one?
So it was how many countries you had?
36 countries. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So it was years, employees, countries, and funding.
5 years.
Hola. La Nevera Roja, we were only in one country. When we sold the company, there were like 100 employees, more or less. Total funding was 10 million, and from start to the sold, it was 4 years.
Fast. So in the case of Trovit, we started in 2006. We raised only 150,000. And 8-9 years later, in 2014, we sold the company. We were 100 employees, and the company with one office, it's just like SocialPoint, only one office here in Barcelona. It was present in, I don't know, 40, 42 countries, something like that.
That's excellent. So Iñaki, just going back the question to you, we have from 150K to 200 million of funding. We have something from 1,000 employees to sort of like 55. I mean, how do you guys see that? I mean, because obviously the audience is curious about, hey, what's the magic formula for just 150K raised and 80 million exit, if there's one?
I don't think there's any magic. I think it depends. Every business is different, and every point of time is different. I don't think we could do it today with that amount of funding. I think we would probably need much more than that. So every case depends. I mean, there's no magic formula, and I mean, the more efficient you can be, the better. Mm-hmm. But there's also the question, and I think you're going to go over that. If you don't take enough funding, maybe you're leaving growth on the table. Who knows?
And in you guys, Gonzalo, I mean, do you have sort of a magic view or something that you think, hey, listen, that was the reason why we didn't need much funding from a start to exit? Anything that you can attribute to that?
Well, first of all, yeah. First of all, I would say that it was the second time we launched a company. We had a previous exit some years ago, before 2009. And we, as a founders, were sure that we want to run the company ourselves. So we were trying not to ask for money. So we were focused on that. Then I would say that Mitula and Trovit are really similar companies. And as you can see, we have done similar things in terms of growth, traffic, people, countries. So I guess, as Iñaki said, is related to business. It depends on what business you have to run. You will need more or less funding. And I think as Trovit, Mitula was profitable since the very beginning. In month 3, we were profitable. So when
month 3, Month 3. Those business plans,
yeah.
You just think about them.
Hola. As they say, your best investor is your client. So that's what Mitula and Trovit did.
Yeah. But anyway, these technological business are not really based on funding, are most based on technology and your ability to scale that technology to many countries, from just one headquarters to as many countries as you can reach. So I guess our business are quite different to what a e-commerce platform or games or food, that will be much different in terms of funding, I guess.
Interesting. Very good.
Yeah. In the case of SocialPoint, I think it's a very illustrative experience, because the Series A was 5 million. It was money that it was really needed. Without that money, the company could not take off. Impossible. Series B, it was 10 million. That money was raised to give comfort for the company, but more importantly, to think big. Because ultimately, the company never went up below 7-8 million in cash. And lately, when we sold the company, we had more than 40 million in the bank. So the money was not really needed, but we wanted to have it to be able to experiment and to be able to try things, the trial and error, especially on marketing, and to be able to think that we could really aspire for something big. Series C was a pure cash out, to, as I said before, to align the interest of investors and founders, to avoid that kind of feeling that if things go wrong, I could lose everything, which is a terrible feeling for a founder.
Excellent.
Privalia is probably the most inefficient case.
No, Lucas, no. Different story.
But it is true that e-commerce is very capital intensive, and Privalia is not just a pure e-commerce company. We are also doing the traditional jobbing business to clear leftovers inventory from brands. And this requires a very local focus of the business. So when we went international, we had to set a new company, almost a new company in every market, and that required even more cash. Even though we were, I would say, a benchmark within e-commerce companies at that time in efficiency, we did our first round of 300K. 1 year later, 1.5 million. 1 year later, 5 million. 1 year later, 20 million. So every time more and more cash. And we became more and more inefficient because of two things. First, the fact of having more cash and cash access. Easier cash access makes you inefficient, but also the fact that we were very successful, and then you think that things are easier than they are, and that you can cope with more things than what you really can cope. And we had a period also of, let's say, probably negative return even of our investment.
No worries, don't say it too loud. Hey, how about sort of going international? Actually, going back to your point, I mean, was there an alignment of funding versus exploring new countries, and how did you guys thought about the next vector, I would say, of scaling a company, which is actually going international? So how did you guys approach that?
Well, for us, any new opening requiring additional cash. So we had to work hand in hand the business strategy and the financing strategy. At that time, raising cash was not so easy, and we were probably a little bit unconscious and even too risky, because sometimes we entered into a new market without having already signed the new investment. But, well, at the end, it worked.
Yeah. Excellent. How do you guys thought about going international? And
well, for our case, as a technology that lands into the Google searches, organic searches, it's really important to become international, because it's the only way you can really grow your company with a little small investment. So I guess in our case is technology that travels really well. Then you need local teams, or at least native speaker teams to get in contact with your clients in this country. That make it a little bit challenging when you start watching the whole world from Madrid in our case. And you have to find people from South America, from Europe, and from Asia here. And we decided to just get some other offices out of the country, so to make it easier to hire those profiles. But becoming international is the only way to grow our business. Is no way you can handle this in just one country.
And what was your experience about that?
First of all, we weren't international, so yes. But the thing is, we built a marketplace, and in order to make a marketplace profitable, you need to get certain liquidity in a certain small area. So building operations, building supply, and building demand, everything at the same time, it's quite expensive. It was not possible to raise enough money to go international when we started, at least for our business. So we just focused in Spain.
Okay. So you guys think that there are some businesses that kind of sort of take longer, take significantly more cash out going international? No? You would have needed a lot more.
Exactly, because well, I guess in the case of Privalia, it's more or less the same. And e-commerce has more operations cost, but building liquidity in a marketplace, it's very expensive in terms of marketing. You have to acquire a lot of users. You have to acquire a lot of restaurants in this case in order to generate that liquidity, and that kind of exponential growth, it's how to say, not very cost efficient. How do you say now?
And Javier, because from one office you were in
the case of
many countries.
SocialPoint is again a business that travels very, very well. It's like the classifieds industry. So we were in basically every single country of the world. People were downloading our games and installing them on the smartphones. 45% of our revenues are still, as of today, come from North America, from the US. We typically launch the games in Australia and Canada, because those are two English-speaking countries that are not that large, that if you screw it up, it's not that a big problem. You don't want to screw it up in the US. But basically, we were all over the world. The only decision we had to make is if we wanted to attack Asia or not, because games in Asia are different. Even the colors of the games and all the animation is different. So we decided that we had no skills to attack China, Japan, and Korea. And although we have some downloads in these markets, because we have, but it's very minor compared to some other companies that have specialized games for these markets.
Excellent. So actually, it's very interesting that, and this is, I think that this is probably sort of also good for a number of software companies that are thinking about going into the US. Before going to the US, you thought about Canada, Australia, a few other markets, to run your product there.
But US is very, very important. Almost for every single industry that is able to travel well through the net, if you make it in the US, it makes a big, big difference in value.
Someone else thought about the US at some point in time? Or about US becoming a very big market for you guys?
Well, I mean, I agree with what Javier said, but in our case, the US, we were there, but it was never relevant. We were not able to crack that market. And I mean, as Gonzalo was saying, we were it was very easy for us to open new countries, not capital intensive, and I don't think in terms of revenues any single country was ever more than 5%, including Spain, where we were based, and I think it's the same today. But the US was difficult, and probably if we had cracked the US, it probably would have been a good bump in our valuation, probably, but we couldn't do it, and still being present in a lot of countries then makes you a valuable company, no? And I totally agree with what Javier said about Asia also. It's very, very difficult coming from a Western country to have the feeling of what a product has to be in Asia. It's really difficult. Even though in the end we were acquired by a Japanese company, but Asia was always off limits for us.
And Gonzalo, because being listed in Australia makes you somehow closer to Asia, no? Then are your product is more is more relevant to Asians than?
Well, I agree with what they just said. Asia is quite amazing as a part of the world to run businesses. I would say that there is 2, 3 Asias, not just one. China definitely it's one thing, and then you have Southeast Asia, and then Japan and Korea that are quite different to the rest. But for us, Southeast Asia is a really big market, really important market. And also India, it's quite big in our case. So that'll help to get listed in Australia whenever you tell about your business being global. What they like about our business over there is that you don't have any specific part of the world that is heavier than the other one. I think our biggest country weights at 7%, 6%. And then you just go to 3 and 2%, but we have lots of them. Right. So that gives comfort to the investor that it's saying that it's really a global company and don't have to worry about a specific market.
Right. Just to the audience, given that we have so many entrepreneurs, for whom the US is your main market? Very interesting. Not so many. For whom Asia is the main market? Very good. You may want to speak to see how you can develop that. Excellent. So, and next stage about scaling is, I mean, how do you go about talent? How do you go about recruiting talent, about kind of sort of nurturing that talent, but also about kind of sort of fighting that talent? Is there, I mean, there are a few recipes that in your company worked particularly well. I mean, everybody knows about sort of that General Electric tends to fire 10% of the workforce every 1 or 2 years, and if they have bad results, maybe it's every 6 months. Okay, so is that? Are there any areas in terms of hiring that you guys kind of sort of thought that were good practices that our audience can leverage?
For SocialPoint, I think we had a few pillars that helped to recruit the talent, because as I said, we went from 0 to 300 plus. About half the company is non-Spaniards, and out of the 12 people in the leadership team, also a bit more than half are non-Spaniards. We have top managers from Australia, from France, UK, from Israel, from Germany. So it's a very multinational team. And some of the recipes were, first of all, and most importantly probably, is a very, very limited tolerance for the non-performers. So if someone was not performing, it was invited to leave the company. Because if you allow non-performing companies to stay, it creates a bad feeling with the ones that are doing a good job. Because it's like you are lagging behind and you have to really pull the others. So every 6 months, we have appraisals, 360, up and down, everything you want. It was well documented, but people non-performing were invited to leave. Then we had a very open-minded in how to recruit people. We were helped by headhunters in a number of countries, referrals, an internal policy within the company that members get members, so employees that were bringing new people on board were getting rewarded for that. And I would say also an idea of creating a very unique culture, a sense of belonging to SocialPoint, that people felt proud, people are still proud, and that they want to be in that place to work. And they explain to the others how good it is to work at SocialPoint. In fact, we had a very, very limited churn, which is the consequence of having a strong culture, a very good policy regarding appraisals and an up-or-out policy, and also that if someone is really good, it can succeed internally.
And what would be the language spoken at SocialPoint, mostly?
Only one single language.
Okay.
It's not Catalan, it's English.
Excellent. Anyone else kind of sort of wants to mention something about, also if you can delve about how to create sort of this top senior management team that sometimes takes a lot of time to create?
I've learned two things. One is that, you need to trust your intuition and your gut feeling in terms of the fit, the cultural fit with the candidates. Always I had some doubts or concerns about that, but my rational evaluation of the candidate was highly weighted to make the candidate an offer. It didn't succeed in the long run. So that's one. Another one is that also over time I discovered, especially with senior candidates, that my success rate in recruiting was roughly 50%. And I discovered that there's people which is much better on that. Having some person that you know is much better and involving this person, even being a consultant or a freelance or whoever you trust, not even within the company, and involve the person in the key hires is important. And I agree also with the previous point that when you are in the hyper-growth stage, you cannot control recruiting. So it's much more important the up-or-out policy and to really fire people that do not perform and be as good as possible in the appraisals, because you do not control who is doing the interviews, how they are doing the interviews, and at the end you need, a lot of people. No? I remember in 2010 we hired 400 people.
Wow.
You cannot control quality.
I totally agree with what they said. So I would only add one thing, that it's a finding or a learning that we had during the years of La Nevera Roja, is that it turns out that it's much more valuable for the company a guy that gets 100,000 euros yearly than 5 guys that get 20,000. Meaning that building a company at the beginning with a lot of cash constraints, it's difficult, and you tend to hire junior people. But at the end, that's a problem. That's a real problem, and that's something that doesn't allow you to grow as fast as you as you can, and that doesn't allow you to take certain strategic decisions. You are always controlling the junior people. So hiring a good bunch of high-quality managers, even though expensive, it's to me the best way to start a company.
So then, plenty of 100,000 people at the beginning.
Well, plenty, as much as you can pay.
As much as you can pay. Okay. Okay.
That's a perverse point because at the beginning you have 100,000 of cash and you need 5 people. So you need to pay 20 per candidate, no? And you know, and as time goes by, you experience that most of these people will never grow as the company is growing. So there's going to be a lot of frustration because that people believe that they have built the company and they are part of the success of the company, but the company needs a different type of profile. And that generates a perverse situation which is very sad and which at the end ends in a lot of conflicts with people that really love the company and feel the company like theirs. No? But I don't think there's a solution for that.
And how about employee stock options, phantom shares, and so forth? I mean, apart from founders, I guess that here there are also many employees or wannabe employees. I mean, what's your take on sort of giving, not giving, giving to many people, giving to restricted people? I mean, sort of phantom shares or employee stock options, and using them as a way to motivate, no, somehow.
I mean, in our case, when we sold the company, I think it was 6 employees had stock, and actually I felt pretty bad. I think we should have shared more with the team. It's also difficult because culturally, at least in Spain, a lot of employees don't appreciate that, or I think it's changing, but a lot of people, they want cash at the end of the month and they don't want options or something like that. But I think loyalty has to be rewarded, and especially, I mean, I would give a lot of stock, not for people who just joined, but for people who have been with you for 4 or 5 years. So you have to do all the vesting and the cliffs and all that stuff. And also, probably you have to find the people that are motivated by that kind of compensation, and those are the right people to have in a startup.
Interesting.
At SocialPoint, we had about 25% of the employees with a stock option plan. Although I think the Silicon Valley approach or the US approach is to have almost everyone in the company with options. The problem is, as Iñaki is saying, that in Spain culturally it's not that well accepted. But there is another problem which goes beyond that, and I don't know if there is someone from the administration here or from the tax authorities, but the problem is that unless you are a founder and you have real shares, phantom stock options are taxed as regular income at the day you sell the company. So you're going to pay 45, 50, 55, depending in which region of Spain you live in. So at the end, it's like, if that year you get a bonus, doesn't make any big difference. So it's a perverse mechanism that does not provide the right incentive. Because in other countries like the US, taxation is much lower than regular income. Yeah. So that's the problem we face in the Spanish companies, that when you give phantom stock, ultimately it's like giving a sort of a bonus when the company is sold.
Okay.
We had a very restrictive approach, although we went through several plans in several stages of the company, but at the end we had 10 people in the plan only. That's good because you concentrate on the key people most of the value. And also we learned over time that for people that had really small participations, that didn't make any impact in retaining them or motivating them. The problem is that this is also perverse because you need to cut somewhere, and that generates again a lot of frustration. No? And we have had even lawsuits from people after the sale because they considered that they had been mistreated because not being part of the plan.
In a listed company, or when you guys were thinking about sort of IPOing, was that a consideration? I mean, sort of phantom shares, employee stock options? I mean,
yes, of course. We had, I think it was around 6-7 people that already hold shares in the company. We had a program which every year we deliver some real shares to these guys, and of course that's, as Javier was saying, that's a big issue in Spain because of the tax. So if you receive shares, you may have to sell the shares to pay the taxes, and that's not really working well in the system.
So if we have authorities, please take note. Okay, taxes are not playing in favor of startup employees.
Yeah, because if the shares are not liquid, then the access to the money is not real. And yeah, it happens that you can create a problem to the employees or to the management. Anyhow, we were delivering these shares in a 2-year program, and when we got listed, everything changed. Of course, I think one of the things that investors insist the most is about that plan. You know, they want to know how is the loan incentive plan is going to take place in the company, and you have to set up one. And I would recommend to try to get into the professional hands to do this, because it seems like maybe you can think about it, but then it's quite complicated to do it with all the company. Now we have a plan that all the employees get shares every year under different criteria, but it's quite funny because, of course, you get the shares only if you want to. Well, there is some people that they don't want to. And the shares are quite free, okay? But it's just like that.
Interesting. Excellent. So you guys may think that success is a straight line going like that, no? Okay, probably it's not, okay? And actually, we think that there's also a bit of a trade-off sometimes between growth and profitability, okay? I mean, how have you guys managed growth versus profitability? I mean, in stages, was that a concern for you? Actually, was growth or profitability a concern at the exit point?
Well, the right solution is profitable growth. Then you have
That's
everything.
very good.
But it's true that normally in the early stages, you tend to favor growth. And also in investors, what they are looking for is growth. You need to scale, they want to have more downloads, revenues, the bottom line is not so crucial, although you have to have a way towards profitability. From day one, they want to know, in my experience, how you will get into profits. So you have to have a model that maybe when you don't have certain scale, it's basically resulting in losses, which is fine. But you need to prove that beyond certain point, you will be able to make money. Because then the economy, especially in the tech space, it goes in cycles. And at certain moments in time, when it's time to exit a company and to give a value, what counts is the bottom line, EBITDA. At SocialPoint, when we sold the company weeks ago, it was very important. And also in my experience as an investor, I mean, when the rubber meets the road, if you have profits and growth, this combination is the ideal. And you probably have to balance. Not all growth is interesting, and not all profits, if you have to cap growth, will end up in the proper result in terms of valuation. So you have to really find the right equilibrium, and it has to do with the moment of the economy and the space in which your company is operating.
Lucas, when you were saying that you got 1.5 million, 20 million, well, you were, I'm assuming, not profitable.
No.
Tell us a bit about kind of sort of how you guys were growing at that point in time.
Yeah. We had an initial phase which was very tough at the beginning in 2005, 2006. But there was a point after 1.5 years or 2 that we became big, meaning 15 million euro company in revenues. And we entered in the radar of the international VCs. And at that time, e-commerce was booming within the investing community. And all VCs wanted to incorporate in their portfolio e-commerce companies. No? So at that time, it was only about growth. It was barra libre, all you can eat. The only thing you had to demonstrate is that with your gross margin and below that some standard ratios that you could achieve with more size, your bottom line will be there.
At some point in time in the future.
Yes. Then we went through a different phase, which is when e-commerce was not the place everybody wanted to be. There were other industries or spaces that were the one for the moment, so everybody forgot about e-commerce. So at that time, they required profitable growth or growth with financial discipline, which is, okay, we need to get to break even as soon as possible, and we are going to monitor this progress quarter by quarter. And then there's a point in time when investors want their cash back, and when the industry and the financial markets value you, at least as an e-commerce company, on EBITDA multiple. And at that time, I mean, it's not all, but it's mainly about EBITDA, but still with growth. Because in this type of companies, even 500 million euro companies, the growth rate affects a lot the EBITDA multiple.
But just for the audience, I mean, whilst in the initial years, probably you were thinking about 3-digit growth, no? So, I mean, 200, 300%, probably in the latter phase was more like some sort of around 10% or things like that, no?
Well, our target for the last 4 years was between 15 and 20% growth year on year.
Very good.
With a long-term EBITDA target of 10%, current EBITDA around 6%.
Wow. Excellent, excellent.
Yeah. And trying to grow profitability every year. So moving to 5.5, to 5.8, to 6.2% on sales.
Very good. So Gonzalo, in your case, I mean, maybe there's less trade-off of profitability because you guys were profitable from the beginning, but about growth, I mean, so, because at some point in time someone could say, hey, maybe you could have been growing more if you would have not been profitable. So, here, Gonzalo, Iñaki, was there that mindset in your, in your
Yes.
strategy at some point in time?
Well, when we started, we knew that the growth was crucial because our business model is a freemium model. So you need a huge amount of traffic, a huge amount of users to monetize part of them. Once you get the growth, once you get the traffic, then you have to start thinking about the percentage that you monetize. So, of course, you had all these users, but you can only get money out of the 3%, and then you have to scale to 4%, 5%, until you get to 20%. And then to get to the next 2%, it's quite tough. So growth internally means the amount of users that pay for the services they receive. In this case, the users are monetized by professional portals. So it's quite a business that needs a lot of traffic and then needs a lot of sales team working to monetize that traffic, okay? But I would say that maybe when you get into the point of being profitable, it's really hard to get out of it. Okay, you get used to get money every month, and you get used to have a profitable company and a company that doesn't need any money. So it's quite hard to focus on growth and forget about profitability, because it's something you see, you know. Even though when we got listed, one of the questions they ask is, so if you are profitable, you have all this money, what do you want more money for? You know, what are you doing with money? And we said, well, we want to bet for non-organic growth. We want money to buy companies. We want money to be able to scale the company in a different level, not just waiting for you to scale it in organic growth. So that's really important as well. You have to decide if you can grow organically or you can go by acquisitions, which is really interesting as well.
Excellent.
Yeah, to add to that, I mean, we had the same model, so we are competitors. So.
But they are friends, okay? They hook themselves,
Yeah.
I mean, each other.
Yeah, they copied us, but we're still friends.
Okay.
And I agree with what Gonzalo says. Once you have profits, it's very hard to not have profits. So you get addicted to that, and it's very nice to have a positive cash flow every month. The thing is, how much growth are you not pursuing just because you're having profit? It's a hard question to answer, no? What I would like to say is, like, especially in our case, and Gonzalo's case is similar. If the founders own most of the company, then there are things like risk and emotions that come into play. And yeah, it's nice to have a profitable company, but it's your company. So you really want it to be profitable. But then you have a lot of risk because the company could stop being profitable next month. So I think in that case, and we were discussing before the panel, that I think doing secondary rounds makes a lot of sense in terms of aligning the objectives of the company and the founders. So if the founders can take some money home and your wife is okay, your children is okay, you can buy a house, things like that, then you can take more risks in the company. And maybe you're not so, I mean, maybe you're okay with not having a profitable company because you're betting on growth. No?
Interesting.
So I think that is something that a few years ago, whenever we talked to VCs and we were looking for a secondary, they were like, "Are you crazy? You're going to take $1 million home?" And like, why not? I mean, I'm still going to work. And I think it's changing now. I think more and more VCs are positive about that kind of transaction.
There's a technical term here, de-risking the founder, okay? So if founders want to take less risk, think about secondary. Actually, you guys at SocialPoint executed, your last round was a complete secondary on that. Excellent. So about growth versus profitability, you guys, I mean, I understand that you probably didn't think about that trade-off, no? You were only growth.
Not at all. And actually, in marketplaces like Nevera Roja, where you get a really small amount of money per transaction, again, you need to reach liquidity. Let's say the process is to start in a certain city. We started in Madrid. With the funding that we got, we didn't get profitable, but we managed to show our investors that eventually this is going to be profitable the moment we reach a certain amount of transactions per month. So the moment you get to that point, so all your investors are sure that you can make this profitable by growing, then everything is about growth.
Interesting. So then somehow going city by city, at some point you were showing that some of the earlier cities were closer to profitability than the other ones. Therefore, that was a good thing for investors to actually keep relying on you.
And actually, it took us 2 years and a half, between 2 years and a half and 3 years, to demonstrate that the business plan had sense. That we were almost getting profitable in Madrid and almost profitable in Barcelona, so it makes sense to go keep growing in other cities, in smaller cities.
Excellent. Hey, we have talked a lot about investors, but hey, let's hear a bit about what investors really mean, those companies that are successful. And actually, the good thing about them right now is that they don't need to raise more. Well, maybe for their second projects, but at least right now they can speak freely about whether investors have contributed or not sort of to their companies. And actually, what we're interested about is what entrepreneurs need to ask from investors, okay? So that investors can add value. Maybe, Lucas, you had the biggest pool of investors, so your learning is very good.
Yes. We had a lot of different type of investors in different phases, and obviously one thing you look for is the cheaper money you can get, and cheaper doesn't mean the best valuation, means the best shareholder agreement, and you need to make sure that you have the right legal advice for that with a lot of experience. But then these 10 years demonstrated us that the best you can have from investors is to have good people in your board. So the people which is promoting the investment and which is doing this journey with you is really good people, and is people you can develop a trustful relationship. And the second one is to have people as senior as possible. When I compare investors that were, or board members that were really senior and those ones that were not, the main difference was that the junior ones became super excited when things were going very well, but they went under panic when things were going bad. And senior investors are much more, have more serenity, have much more perspective, and they can be really helpful both. When things are going too well, which there are a lot of dangers behind that, and when things are tough.
Yeah, in my experience, the board plays different roles, so the advisors or the investors. First of all, money. Without money, there is nothing to be done in a startup. Guidance, that's the other obvious thing you expect from the investors and board members. But then there are other more subtle and very important things. One is flexibility, because most likely you're going to have to change your plans, your strategies. You're going to have to reshape, readdress some of your decisions. So you need the board to be able to be flexible and follow your process as you mature and as you learn from the business. And very importantly also, patience, because not everything happens overnight. And building on Lucas' point, the more senior is a person, probably it has a more broader perspective and is able to really combine this flexibility with patience. Another important thing in the dynamics between the founders and the investors is how you create a relationship. What kind of role, or where do you define the boundaries? Again, in my experience, is very important that the board give advice, puts inputs into the equation, but the decision has to be taken by the founder or CEOs. The board cannot take decisions. If the board does that, it's overtaking the role of the founder and the CEO. So, and that's an important thing, because sometimes the board has the temptation or the inclination to assume the role of the managers and take decisions. It's like if a football coach would like to score a goal. That's not going to happen. So again, this is the same in startups. So the board has to give advice, has to provide all the thinking you want, but at the end, leave everything on the table and let the managers run the business and take decisions.
Okay, for our case, I think we cannot really give, or I cannot really give really good advice about investors. We don't have investors inside, or we do have allowed thousands of them, but not in the previous years. We just had one strategic investor. It's a guy that I met in a conference in San Francisco. And he was in a stage just, saying the pitch, and I knew that he and I would have to do something together. So when the company was already running, it was in June 2010, so we got already 1 year old. I called him and I told him that I think he should join the company because it was a company that was growing really, really hard and it was going to be something big. So he took a plane, came over to visit us, and he did. He invested in us, but of course not a big amount of money, maybe just 150,000. But the point is that thanks to that, we ended in Australia listing the company because he was the strategic investor that saw us the way to do it in somehow. So I guess I would say that as important as money is the strategic. And if you have good advice and people that can take you to the right path, then that's going to give you a lot of help.
Just keeping with you, Gonzalo. So, and moving to sort of how do you prepare for the exit actually? And in your case, we have one IPO. This is very good, okay? Because it brings more liquidity and it brings more options to startups here. Although it's true, he had to travel a bit far afield. He had to IPO in Australia, okay, not yet in Spain, but it's fine. So how did you prepare for that IPO? Just a glimpse of what it took you.
Okay, so well, it's really funny to be with Iñaki here because Iñaki is kind of our light. They were doing the same 2 years in advance. So when Trovit got a deal in October 2014, we definitely saw an exit. There was a company like ours, a little bit bigger, older, but same structure, 3 or 4 founders, friends that run the company from the beginning to an end, and they did a really good job and a really successful exit. So we listen, there is something we can do. So yeah, we will start working on an exit probably a year before the IPO. We never thought about it until we had a meeting with a broker guy from Australia that told us about the amount of classified companies that are listed over there. There is at least 8 companies, big companies listed in Australia doing classifieds online. Some of them are the biggest in the world, and the investors over there understand really good our business model. So we took a plane, we went over in February 2015. We had a couple of meetings with investors and brokers, and definitely they knew about our business. So we decided to, to create your own market. And five months later, we listed, and since then, well, it's different thing. It's completely different to manage a company that is listed to manage a company that you run with 3 friends, but we're happy about it.
And did you ever think about a Spanish listing?
No. No,
okay, maybe authorities need to do something about that.
It's too hard. It's too hard to understand the ecosystem of investors for these kind of businesses in Spain. You don't have any related thing. We do think that we could do a dual listing, maybe in other country, probably London, New York, something like that.
Okay.
I don't think our business will be understood here, but anyhow, I think good thing about getting listed, since we did it, we had bought 3 companies.
Wow.
So that's another exit row for other companies that, by the way, are good friends of us in some cases, and some competitors that we bought them with liquid shares. So I think that gives money and shares, liquid shares, to the ecosystem of the entrepreneurs, and that's really good.
And you were talking also about liquidity for the founders somehow, no? I mean.
Oh yeah, that's really important, because when you get listed, there's many ways of getting listed. Getting listed is not an exit. It's not, you are not supposed or not forced or not able to get the money, from founders. So that's something that you have to negotiate really, really good. In our case, it wasn't too hard because we were profitable since really beginning, and we don't have to demonstrate if the business gives money to the investors. We already saw that. It was more into the 3 founders getting diluted to get some space for the new investors. So yeah, we had a plan of how to do secondary listings for us in the years.
Okay. And in your case, Inigo, I mean, it's been well publicized that kind of sort of, I would say, there was some price competition that kind of sort of played into it. I mean, how can you tell us a bit? I mean, how have you guys kind of sort of exited? Because you also had sort of the quickest start to finish out of the panel. So how did you play about it?
First of all, everything started when we managed to get on board Mediaset as an investor. Mediaset is a listed company, so managing a listed company wasn't, we were a bit afraid of how they were going to behave, but at the end it was very good. So in terms of investor, it's really important the person that's going to be in the board and the person that is doing the investment. And secondly, well, when they get on board, we started to do some TV ads, and that allowed us to grow very fast. That allowed us to become the first player ahead of Just Eat. So at that moment, Just Eat started to push for an acquisition. That was November, December 2014. They started to contact us, but we say no. And at a certain point, there was also a German competitor called Delivery Hero that also came to Spain and bid for the company again. And at that moment, we thought we should start let's say, a professional process to do this. So we got a contractor that helped us with the process. It was between December and January 2015, and at that moment we had 2 bids, Delivery Hero and Just Eat. The bid for Just Eat was much better, the bid from Just Eat. So we started the process with Just Eat, but then these crazy guys called Rocket Internet came from Germany, and they placed a bid that was several percentage above the one that Just Eat did, and we ended up selling the company there. But it was really interesting process. It was less than 1 month. Everything happened in less than 1 month. It was super fast, super stressful. We were living at the lawyer's office actually, but it was really interesting to see that process.
Excellent. And in Lucas, Iñaki, Javier, did you see also some bidding competition? I mean, for your companies, did it help at some point in time?
In our case, We certainly had competition. If you don't have competition, it's hard to get a good valuation. I mean, you have to have at least 2 bidding parties. And, but contrary to your experience, in our case, it took about 6 months.
Okay.
From serious conversations until closing. I have to say it was Thanksgiving and Christmas in between, which doesn't help, because it started roughly after the summer, and we closed the deal a few weeks ago in January.
And preparation for that first conversation maybe took 3 or 4 months before that, or?
About a year ago, we started thinking seriously in selling the company. The company had approaches since the very beginning, but we resisted the temptation to sell it for too low and keep building the company to a bigger size and to a bigger exit.
Okay, excellent. I'm being told that we have we're running out of time, but just one last question. Okay, and I started at the beginning by saying that. So we have 5 great companies, all together $1 billion. I mean, how do you think, guys, about building the next sort of $1 billion company in Spain? Javier actually built a $500 million, I mean, sort of a number of years ago. But how do you guys would approach that, and what do you think that the ecosystem needs to get sort of to $1 billion?
The most important thing is to be really self-convinced that out of Spain, out of Barcelona, out of Madrid, out of any place in the world, you can build a great company. Today, location, if you are supported with talent, it allows you to build a company, but you have to really aspire to something big. Otherwise, as soon as you get the first money on your door, if you don't have very clear ideas that you could make it big, you will take the money, because it's too tempting, especially when you start a company. If someone shows you the first check, I mean, say no is difficult. So you really have to believe that you can do much, much better.
I think it's a matter of maturity of the market, investment market, entrepreneurs, second-time entrepreneurs, advisors. That doesn't mean that there may be now some companies in Spain that can be a unicorn at some point in time in the future. But if what we want is to have that on a continuing basis, I think it's a matter of market maturity. Now we are here, companies between, I don't know, 80 and 500. Okay, probably in 5 years from now, the same panel will be with companies between 200 and 1 billion or 1.5 billion.
Excellent.
Well, I'm still on the run. Okay, we're still working on that. We're still working on that. We manage the company and it's listed, and I think we're working on a higher valuation year on year. But yes, I agree with my partners. I think what we need is just a true ecosystem. So I think it's really good that more and more money are coming from VCs to Spain, and foreigners and local VCs to invest in a startup in Spain. I think, Oriol, you're doing a great job on that also. So thanks for bringing some of those good deals to this country. And just, you know, I think it's quite hard to create a big and successful business. It's just 5 years old in our case, and most of the cases here. When you find an exit, it's hard to say no to an exit because, well, it's quite sexy and attractive. Sometimes if you say no, you could jump into the next level, you know. So maybe we need a more patient and harder work from the 5th year ahead. Okay.
Well, I totally agree, and I don't know what to say. My only, I think, how do you say it? My only advice, and this for us mainly, is that people who get an exit, it's very important that they reinvest, you know, not only their money but also their time in helping the ecosystem, because we got a lot from the ecosystem and we have to, I think we have to give it back. And here everyone is doing this, so again, it will evolve with maturity. It will mature in the coming years, and certainly we will have here some unicorns.
Absolutely.
In the coming years.
Thanks for doing that. Yeah.
I think in the end it comes down to people. So I think we are lucky that we have more and more people at all the levels that our company needs, like employees who have already worked at startups and are knowledgeable in whatever their function is. We have second-time entrepreneurs. Inigo is just creating his second company, probably be bigger than the first. And we also have more and more experienced advisors who can help these entrepreneurs. So I think in the end it comes to people, and I think we have more and more people that have been successful in one way or another in their previous companies, and who will probably be able to make bigger and better and faster companies in the near future. So I'm very optimistic about that.
Excellent. So thanks a lot. Please, a big round of applause for our panelists. Has been great. And thank you for being here.